The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Miller, Senator McConnell said that American citizens attacked their own government. They used terrorism to try to stop a specific piece of democratic business they did not like, the counting of electoral college votes. Do you agree with that?
The statement that this was a terrorist attack?
They used terrorism to stop a specific piece of democratic business. Fellow Americans beat and bloodied our own police. They stormed the Senate floor. They tried to hunt down the Speaker of the House. They built a gallows and chanted about murdering the Vice President. They did this because they'd been fed wild falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth because he was angry he'd lost an election. Do you disagree with any of that?
I agree that it was an act of terrorism.
Okay. Madam Chair, some of our distinguished colleagues, including my friend from Louisiana, have been invoking the 74 million who voted for Donald Trump. Here's what Senate Minority Leader McConnell had to say about that. In recent weeks, our ex-president's associates have tried to use the 74 million Americans who voted to reelect him as a kind of human shield against criticism. Anyone who decries his awful behavior is accused of insulting millions of voters. That's an absurd deflection. 74 million Americans did not invade the Capitol. Several hundred rioters did, and 74 million Americans did not engineer the campaign of disinformation and rage that provoked it. One person did, and that was Donald Trump. So this is an essential hearing, Madam Chair, but it will barely scratch the surface of the questions that need to be answered about the violent insurrection against Congress and the Constitution to overthrow the results of the 2020 presidential election. We need a complete bipartisan, multi-partisan, nonpartisan 9/11 style commission to study the causes and the events of January 6th and the response to it. But our colleagues, alas, have done everything in their power to block the formation of a commission, including slandering Black Lives Matter, a nonviolent movement for justice that they continue to lie about with their propaganda. And today we've heard different numbers bandied about: 25 people who died in Black Lives Matter protests, 19 people who died, and so on. A lot of the people they're talking about are people who were killed by right-wing counter-protesters or provocateurs. For example, one of the deaths that they want to blame on Black Lives Matter was Federal Protective Service Officer David Underwood in Oakland, California. And I remember very clearly when my colleagues came to Congress and said, look what Black Lives Matter did, and they were trying to blame this on this movement. But in fact, he was shot by Stephen Carrillo, an Air Force staff sergeant who was active with the right-wing Boogaloo movement and is now standing trial for that murder. They count as part of their number the two people that were killed by 17-year-old vigilante gunman Kyle Rittenhouse, who crossed state lines to kill protesters and is now standing trial for first-degree murder. So we can't get into all of it, but they're saying we can't have a commission to study what happened on January 6th, the attack on this Congress, the attack on the Constitution, the attack to overthrow the presidential election, unless we drag in the Boogaloo Boys and everything that happened with these attacks on the Black Lives Matter movement. This is an outrageous and unnecessary and irrelevant distraction from this assault on America. Now, after having lost the presidential election by 7 million votes, 306 to 232, a margin that he had declared a landslide in 2016 when he won by the exact same margin, Trump tried unsuccessfully to get Republican state legislatures across the country to throw out the popular vote and to substitute teams of Trump electors. When that didn't work, they went and they tried to intimidate and coerce state election officials like Brad Raffensperger in Georgia to just manufacture votes. Trump called him up on the phone and basically told him to commit election fraud. Just find me, I think it was 11,780 votes, he said, and the whole world saw it. And when that didn't work, at that point, he began to appeal to his most right-wing supporters, the Proud Boys, who he told to stand back and stand by. and the 3%ers and the Oath Keepers to come to Washington. Don't go to Georgia, don't go to Pennsylvania, but come to Washington, and not on any day, but on the day we're counting the Electoral College votes, and not at any time, but 1 hour before then. And then he pointed them like a loaded pistol at the Capitol and said, you got to go and fight like hell, or you're not going to have a country anymore. You got to go show strength, or you're not going to have a country anymore. And now we're getting this outrageous Orwellian revisionist history where Donald Trump is out there saying that his most loyal followers came in literally, he said, hugging and kissing the Capitol officers. Now, come on. This is why we need a real commission to study the events of that horrific day of an attack on America, study the causes of it, and get to the bottom of it. But my colleagues should stop with all of the evasions, the diversions, and the distractions. Let's figure out what happened to us on that day. I yield back to you, Madam Chair.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from North Carolina, Dr. Fox.